Since its first discovery, photography has made rapid progress, especially as regards to the instruments employed in its practice. It now remains for the artist to raise it to its proper position among the fine arts. Gustave Le Gray. Welcome to the Out of Focus podcast. So, episode 5, who'd have thought it, Bradley, yeah? It's a thing.
We're making it.
Yeah.
We're making it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And also this week we have the wonderful Giselle Dupre from New York City. Got it? Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Duprez.
I'm sure that's a common.
How are you, Giselle? Have you been stuck on any trains recently?
No. Everything.
Yeah, well, that's not what I heard.
Lies.
A couple of things to get started with. I've noticed that the episodes have been getting a bit longer, and although some of you may like that, I really want to keep this, or at least try to keep this, around about a 30-minute podcast. And if it runs into 45 minutes or so, that's fine. But once we start to push over an hour, I feel like we're taking up too much of your time, and we know the time is precious. And we did, last week we ran on quite a bit, but it was all relevant conversation, I think. And that discussion and ideas and process is really what got me interested in photography and talking about it. And you can go in many different directions, and it helps us to, I suppose, explain the why. And that's what I wanted to do here. And I hope that our discussions will help you cut through the bullshit of the industry and set you on a more rewarding path as far as photography is concerned. And believe me, it's like when you're not chasing gear and you're working for yourself, I mean, that's where it's at, man.
I agree. I mean, I think when you're working for yourself or you're working to satisfy yourself, that's the goal.
Yeah. I think that there's also a lot of like people work to, I suppose, because of the way the industry's structured, they're just working to satisfy other photographers.
I think that's a common thing. That's the way people start, and that's kind of the way I fell into that trap early on. I felt like my first wedding, I did exactly what I wanted to do, and then after that I sort of struggled working backwards with what do people want, and then I realized quickly, you have to be yourself, and if you show the kind of work that you want to, that you really love, that will get you where you need to be.
Well, hopefully. How do you feel about street photography, Giselle?
Well, I don't do this for a living, so I have the luxury of shooting whatever I want to shoot, and nobody's really influencing me. It's nice to make a living at it, but I think as soon as somebody starts to pay you, there are other outside forces kind of shaping what you shoot, whether you want them to or not. So
yeah. So it's kind of difficult to. Yeah. I get that. It is a bit of a struggle as far as I'm concerned. I do try and shoot how I want, but there's always that kind of idea that I have to deliver something other than that as well, which I do. It's not like I'm not like an arsehole to go, you only get what I do. It's your day, and it's kind of obviously there's it's mostly what I do, but a little bit of what maybe Auntie Mary wants and the parents want and stuff like that. You got to keep people happy, man. Otherwise, like, I'm not going to get hired. Well,
that's a great point. Once money comes into it, things do change. And, we've all seen articles about if you really love photography, here are some things you should consider before becoming a professional, because you have to serve yourself. But anytime there's a client involved and anytime there's money involved, there's satisfaction of yourself, but you have to satisfy the people that are paying you, or you won't continue getting work.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. But yeah, it's kind of, but we look at other photographers, like, I mean, Sarah Moon, do you think she ever cared about how sharp her photographs were? And did Bruce Gilden ever give a shit about what anybody else thinks about his photographs? Or did Richard Avedon ever second guess his kind of low, wide angle approach to portraits? People like that have a unique voice, and they do their own thing, and eventually they will get paid for that.
Well, I think we touched on that, I think maybe last week or the week before, but I think a great point was when you have people being discovered, like they're rare, but like Vivian Meyer, where she was literally just doing it for herself, had no desire to share it, even share it with anyone to get feedback, even from family members. This stuff was just literally going into storage. And, to discover that body of work that was, most of it is really incredible.
Well, yeah, so it's these ideas and this understanding that we are trying to get across, and I hope it's starting to ring through a little bit. But, man, we've got a long way to go. We're right at the beginning. But as far as the time's concerned and how long it's going to take us to get through these how long we're going to give to these podcasts, it comes down to my inexperience at hosting and interviewing. But I'm sure my timekeeping and mediation will improve over time. And okay, well, I hope so anyway. We might just end up recording all the way through to the next episode. It'll just get longer and longer, and we'll get no sleep. Yeah.
We can do a 24-hour thing, and that would really be groundbreaking.
Oh man, I don't think I have.
That would be the definition of hell.
Yeah, a 24-hour podcast. Who's going to listen to that shit though? This is the point. It's kind of once things start to get over an hour. I think half an hour, 45 minutes it's a good length of time. People can give you that time. But once you start running an hour and a half, people have to make time to go and listen to your podcast, where I think most of the stuff that I listen to, they're like 20, 30, 40 minutes long, and they're easier to consume.
I agree. I mean, we have this, if we can keep this to 30 minutes, then we have the Truman Show with Jim Carrey as the other extreme, where it's 24 hours.
On forever. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so without further ado, Gustave Le Gray, French photographer, 1820 to 1844. He was probably the most important French photographer of the 19th century because of his technical innovations and his role as the teacher of other noted photographers. And he had this imagination that he brought to picture making, but he originally trained as a painter. At the time, in the 1850s, Le Gray had a big lavish studio, and he had a lot of investors, and he became the photographer of Napoleon III.
And what a connection!
What a connection! Yeah, he became. Absolutely. When we look at his stuff, his seascapes and ships and all of that kind of stuff, it all starts to kind of make sense a little bit. In spite of his artistic success, his business was a financial failure. It's poorly managed and ran into debts, and it's because he was more of an artist than he was a businessman. And it's kind of, I kind of understand that, because I have no idea about business at all. It just so happens that what I'm doing has ended up making me some money to carry on doing what I'm doing. I don't really have any overheads and studios and investors that I have to keep happy. And it's just a case of like, I know nothing about business. I get emails from people asking about this type or that, and I don't even understand the questions that they're asking me, never mind how I can apply what I do to it. I'm just kind of muddling along, and somehow I kind of keep my head above water, which is nice. Gustave, unfortunately, had a lot of people that he had to pay money to. His studio, he had to close down. And as great as he was at other things, he was a bit of a loser in life, and he ran from his debtors, closed his studio, abandoned his wife and children, and fled the country. What an arsehole.
I was going to say, until you got to the abandoning his wife and children, he sounds like every other photographer.
Yeah. Although I don't know.
Money troubles? That's weird.
Photography. I'm out of here. But he ran off. He went off
in the back.
Yeah, he went off on a ship, and ditched. But the thing is, this guy, he championed like the paper process, and said that the daguerreotype will kind of die, which it did. And he developed a method of waxing the paper to give it a more transparent nature, allowing for more detailed prints. And he also published a theoretical kind of idea of the collodion process a year before Frederick Scott Archer published his process in 1851, and the wet collodion method is now credited to Frederick Scott Archer.
And I think he kind of stumbled into early attempts at HDR with using multiple negatives composites.
Yeah, so
to-
absolutely. So it's solving the problems that, I mean, we still have those problems today regarding specular highlights, and it's difficult to photograph a seascape or landscape without blending negatives or digital files and things like that. And this guy was essentially doing that in the 1850s. He saw a problem and found a way around that.
I think, you know what, I don't know if it's still accurate, but I remember reading something like one of his photographs was the most expensive photograph ever sold at auction, £500,000 or
£500,000, and I think another one of his in the same auction, somebody else got that title.
those lucky bastards.
I don't know. So like he had the
nice
most
to have that money.
it was the most expensive photograph ever sold, and then somebody else sold another photograph that was more expensive. Like, bastard.
Yeah, we know for sure it didn't go to another photographer.
Right, yeah, absolutely. How could it? Maxime Duchamp, who we will probably get into later on, is a former pupil of Legray, and he offered his own opinion, and it was, if he had not been scatterbrained, he would have made his fortune.
Again,
Yeah.
we're seeing a common theme here.
Photographers scatterbrained. I mean, I barely can, I don't know, just function correctly. You know, I'm surprised that I've built a business and I kind of do what I do, because I'm always at something and I get distracted really quickly. And I think Legray, he had this great portrait business, but he was so like, I need to do other things, and he was interested in photographing seascapes and like landscapes and all of that kind of stuff. So he was always doing something else rather than what he should be doing. So he's like a master procrastinator. But the things that he procrastinated with are the things that kind of made him famous eventually.
Yeah, and maybe that ended up being a positive, but it would be interesting to see if there was any kind of long-term study with people with predisposed to artistic endeavors and ADD.
Possibly.
Maybe we all have it.
Maybe we all have it to some extent.
I'm sorry, what were we talking about? Just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, for the last 20 years of his life, he ran off, never returned to France, and died in Egypt. Quite fitting, though, that he sailed off on a ship on around the Mediterranean to make
romantic.
photographs. Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
my favorite thing that I read was that he probably died on July 30th, 1884. They don't know. That means he probably, like, you know, Amelia Earhart or any of those unsolved mysteries, he just went off and it was beautiful and romantic and a great ending to a story, and no one knew exactly where. And if he abandoned his family.
He abandoned his family, but he lived and worked in Egypt for the last 20 years of his life. I think he was teaching photography, or I can't remember exactly what it was. Anyway, that is Gustave Legray, and you guys should go and check him out. We will put links to various websites that we found where we get the information from. He's a handsome chap, bit of a dick when it came down to it, but yeah,
he did a lot of self portraits from what I've seen too.
Right? Yeah,
because he was aware of his own handsomeness.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, like, yeah, he was an innovator as far as photography is concerned, and helped photography along in its very early days, which is pretty cool. Yeah, Gustave Legray, check him out. Hi, Giselle.
Can we credit him with the selfies then?
Can we credit him with selfies? Yeah, we can.
I don't know.
HDR and selfies.
Yeah,
Right.
if we called William Henry Fox Talbot Foxy, maybe we can call Gustave Selfie Legray.
No,
I don't think that's gonna stick.
I kept thinking you were saying Foxy on the last one. So
Foxy, yeah. Foxy. Hi, Giselle.
hi.
How's it going?
All right. How are you guys?
Good. Yeah. I'm all right. I'm fine.
Oh,
I
I've never been better. This show is the wind beneath my wings.
Yay! You know yourself. So, Giselle, where are you?
I am here in Brooklyn, in New York.
Excellent. Have you always lived in New York? Did you grow up there?
Yeah, I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in Queens, lived on Long Island, been in Brooklyn for over 20 years. So, my home.
Cool. And you photograph the street.
The street. People in the street.
People on the street.
Let's hear more about that.
Do you call yourself a street photographer, or are you just a photographer?
Probably probably mostly street photography. I mean, when I first started, I tried doing other things, and I took pictures in the cemetery and landscape photography and buildings and stuff and graffiti, and then I just kind of gravitated towards street photography. So it's the overwhelming majority of what I like to shoot.
Right, okay, cool. So, like, what got you started with that then?
I started really late, and I started really backwards. I look at all these people who have good technical foundation or started shooting film, and I just picked up a camera like 6 or 7 years ago and started shooting. And I'm actually working my education kind of backwards. Yeah. Now I'm trying to kind of, I started in auto, then I started trying to learn how to shoot manual, then I started learning how to shoot flash, then I, trying to kind of do the foundation.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, you are learning. You didn't just start with auto and go, yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with this. This'll do, and just never progress or never get any better. How do you feel that you're learning and study? I know you read a lot of like photography books and like your bedtime reading series. You always show a picture of the book that you're reading. Yeah. So I mean, it's like, how is that informing your photography, and what do you think? What do you think's changed since you started looking at other photographers and reading books? And
well, I kind of surround myself with a lot of people, and I'm looking at a lot of books. I'm fortunate enough to live in New York, where there's no shortage of things and people to shoot here. So I'm lucky that sometimes I go visit my mom in Florida and I'm bored to death. I mean, here I can walk out my door and shoot, and then I'm educating myself. Looking at photographers I like and trying to figure out why, and reading books all the time. And then I'm fortunate to have a really good group of friends who are mostly street photographers, and we learn from each other. And, there's competition. We're generous with each other. It's not, there's enough for everybody to do it. So I learn a lot from my friends who are probably more patient with me than I deserve.
Well, New York has some of the best bookstores in the world, obviously.
Yeah.
I've been in a few of them, and they're amazing. Like you could spend all day in those. So a few weeks ago, I started asking, I think because the first photography book I ever bought was so instrumental in changing the way that I looked at photography and really getting me hooked on a sort of a deeper level. I'm curious about what was the first photography book you remember buying, and how did that?
I think I started with either like Walker Evans or Robert Frank. I really liked a lot of those, photos from early Americana stuff and a lot of black and white stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I started getting into street, I started looking at kind of Deanne Arbus and Helen Levitt and a lot of people who were doing good stuff. And I'm kind of on a color kick lately. I used to really shoot in black and white.
Right.
Shoot in raw, but would process in black and white all the time.
Yeah. So what changed your ideas from black and white to color?
A really good friend of mine who's a great photographer said, don't let black and white be a crutch. You need to learn how to shoot color.
Okay.
And that just kind of made me stop and think a lot more about what I was shooting. And then, I'm really into the beach. I shoot at Coney Island a lot.
Yeah.
So I started shooting with flash in the daylight. Not crazy, not like Bruce Gilden style in your face.
Yeah.
But
I love that picture of you and Bruce Gilden.
That was a pretty funny experience. I thought he was really going to be a dick, and he wasn't. He talked to us for a long time. It was just kind of like, hey, are you Bruce Gilden on Coney Island? I mean,
yeah, loads of people think he's a dick. The people that I talk, Bruce Gilden, he's a dick. Have you ever seen an interview or listened to him talk about anything? And like, no, it's just like he comes across as that. He's not. He's a really sensitive, caring chap.
He chatted with us for like an hour. His wife was with him. I think she was bored to tears, but he just...
Yeah, oh no, another conversation.
I get that as well. I get the eye roll all the time. Oh no, the photography started. He's off. Okay then, Giselle. So if we go back to, what was your first photography book? Or the first one that you kind of went, I like this, man?
I think it was either Walker Evans or Robert Frank. I mean, looking at the Americans, some of that stuff. Yeah. But then I just kind of got more into street stuff. And now I've got, as you know, Ian, from looking at my bedtime stories, I take a photo book to bed with me almost every night. I've got a rotation of favorites.
Recently, I've seen. Was it Roy Dicker? No. Who have you been reading recently?
Well,
There's a series. There's like 5 books in the box.
Gordon Parks.
Gordon Parks. That's the one.
That set is just beautiful. There's a
It's in-
5-volume set, and it's just bound nicely, and it's printed nicely,
Yeah,
and
yeah. That's
it's just
that is a photography education in a packet.
yeah. And he did everything. I mean, he did street
Yeah.
photography, he did fashion, he did documentary. He did it all. So
Yeah. He's
inspirational.
really cool, really inspirational. It's kind of that persistence, man, and just the amount of photographs and the amount of different projects that he worked on, and that's it always gets me. It's like, why do people do that? What compels people to go and photograph so much?
And what's really interesting too is that he didn't know what he was doing at first, like most of us, But he got a shooting fashion, and he went down to this, somebody owned a department store. He became friends with the guy's wife, and he gave him a gig to shoot fashion. And he went and he screwed up everything on his shoot, and he got one shot. But that one shot was the money shot, and it just, he got gigs. All you need is that one shot sometimes. So, yeah.
But yeah, I think that one common theme with some of the great photographers is they feel compelled to do what they do regardless of external factors in life, regardless of setbacks. They're like, well, I screwed that job up. I guess I'm done.
People are afraid to fail these days. No, I can't do it. I won't do it. I just say yes to everything, or I used to say yes to everything and figure it out on the fly, man. And if I messed it up, it wasn't the end of the world. Obviously, I wasn't shooting weddings at the time. It wasn't like a one chance thing. It was like, well, if I mess it up, I'm not going to get paid. We'll just get somebody else to do it. And it's like, you just got to jump in feet first and learn as you go, man. What really compels you to make photographs? If this isn't your bread and butter, what makes you go out and photograph?
I like observing people, and I like to walk, and I like to take photos or make photos, and it's the first hobby I've ever had that I really stuck with.
Okay.
So I really like going. I mean, if you look at the stuff that I shoot, I'm usually going into what I think are interesting areas: Chinatown, old Russian neighborhoods, religious ceremonies. I shoot a lot of Orthodox Jews, which is not easy to do as a woman or as an outsider. I just really like the surroundings that I'm in are so interesting. And when I look back at photos, particularly in New York, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and people think this city's just changing and, going to shit. I think there's still some stuff left, but it's vanishing. So I just want to go out and find what's left and what's still interesting. I just get bored if there's really, if it's all just kind of vanilla.
Yeah.
Well, I can't imagine anything would ever get uninteresting in New York. It is evolving. Like, I remember going there for the first time in the mid or late 80s, and it had a very different feel than it did, say, 20 years ago or 20 years later. Sometimes good, sometimes not.
Yeah. So this the idea that you like photographing and the observation, and how much do you think that teaches you about yourself, man, when you're out there photographing and you're trying to figure that out and what you want to photograph and what you don't want to photograph?
I think that living in New York and being open to different people is, I grew up mostly on Long Island in a very white upper class neighborhood with people who all look just like me pretty much.
Yeah.
Coming and living in Manhattan or living in Brooklyn and shooting in Manhattan has just kind of opened my eyes to different people and different cultures. And it's just taught me things that I used to think were pretty are just not that interesting. But I'm looking for some sort of character. And, the part of the reason why I like Chinatown or the Russian neighborhoods are that people are aging naturally. And, I just find it a lot more interesting than, finding the ladies from lunch. Although, they could be fun too.
Yeah, there's a project in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the kind of juxtaposition to other neighbourhoods where people aren't so superficial and, as you say, they're growing old gracefully or disgracefully, however you would like to imagine it. Yeah, there's definitely observation and...
Part of it to me is exciting, just, wanting to see how people, most of the times people don't even notice what I'm doing, but, sometimes I get a reaction. Sometimes it's a good reaction. Sometimes it's not a good reaction. And, That's always interesting to me as well.
I was going to say I was photographing in New York, and there was I don't know if it was an Italian section of or an Italian section of town, but I saw this great thing happening across the street, and I started photographing, and one of the gentlemen got upset. He was very upset and started yelling at me. Have you had any experiences where you felt unwelcome or unsafe?
Unsafe, not so much. Partly because I'm a native and I kind of feel like I have good street sense. That doesn't mean that people, you can still get hurt or jumped or accosted by anybody, even if you're being smart about what you do. I have had people get pissed. Last week, some Russian old man threatened to break my fucking camera. I just kind of laughed. It was daylight. It was I was at Brighton Beach. I had a big fur Russian hat on, and it just was kind of funny. I mean, I try not to be too obnoxious. I'm trying not to make people out. I'm trying not to get the worst, I don't like to do things that I feel are exploitative. But yeah, I've had some people. I've also had some really great encounters where people want to know, why did you take my picture? And then you start talking to them, and that's the other part of it that I like.
But as you said before, it's like most people don't, they neither notice you or care what it is that you're doing. You just get on, you can do. A couple of times for me, I had a guy, it was in San Francisco, I had a guy, I saw him walking along beside me, and I kept looking, what does he want? And he went, did you just take my picture? I went, no, I don't think so. He went, you did? Well, I didn't. I went, oh, where were you? And he went, I was sitting down over there and I was eating something. And he went, that's so impersonal, man. You can't just do that to people. I was like, well, I'll delete it if you want. And he was going, well, yeah, delete it. So I showed him it, deleted it, and he went, it's just impersonal. It's not right, and walked off. It's like, well, it wouldn't be candid street photography if I went and tapped everybody on the shoulder and said, dude, is it all right if I take your photograph?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with doing that, but I'm looking for a more candid approach. But some people don't. It was like who's after you, man? Who are you hiding from? That's what I was thinking.
Well, on a corollary about street photography, who do you find? I know before we talk about the pros and cons of what you do, who do you find inspiring? That's a current photographer for what would you consider street photography?
Well, we talked about Bruce Gilden before. I like what he does. It's a little too out there in your face. I'm surprised he hasn't just totally gotten his ass kicked yet. There are a lot of people that I like that are in New York and doing stuff locally that you might not have ever heard of before. Some of them are friends of mine. Some of them are just in the community that I've gotten to know after a while. I like this woman, Melissa Breyer, a lot.
Yeah, no, Melissa's amazing. I'm going to try and see if Melissa will come on for a chat. Yeah.
I think Melissa's fantastic. I'm in this Women in Street Facebook group now, so I've gotten a lot of women that I've been exposed to. I like Julia Coddington a lot. She's got an interesting style, kind of Australian beach stuff with lots of good colors in it. I like Michelle Rick. She's a local, too. I like Clay Benson, but he keeps changing his mind about whether he wants to shoot or not. He shoots and then he disappears and then he comes back.
The thing is, though,
he's the Dave Chappelle of street.
Yeah, absolutely. But he is Clay's. He just produces some great stuff, and as I say, it just disappears.
Yeah, he does, and I've actually met him personally a bunch of times. I wish he'd stick to it, but that's his thing. So I enjoy him even more when he comes back and starts to do it again.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how he has to work. There are people who they can only produce continuously, and maybe there are people who can only produce intermittently, and he needs those breaks in order to be at his peak.
Yeah, he's great. So those are the people that inspire me and that I watch and learn from either directly or indirectly. I've shot with Melissa before. She's great. So.
What did you think of Gary Winogrand?
Oh, I like his stuff a lot too. I mean, he was definitely interesting. I have some of his books as well. I'm in this I'm in this color phase right now. So I think right now I'm into Stephen Shore a lot. He's got a really great that's fantastic. Some Alex Webb stuff, some Fred Herzog stuff. I know, Ian, you've probably seen my little bedtime stories.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Fred Herzog as well. It's kind of, but it's like that guy was photographing on his way to work and on his way home from work.
Yeah.
You know, that's what he was doing. It's kind of like that's what you're doing. You're like kind of in between, like other than your other job, you're like going out to photograph.
Well, look at Vivian Meyer, who's, you know, a nanny, but she had her camera with her. I take my camera, something's with me all the time. I'm on the subway. Today,
Yeah, me too.
I met a woman. She had a giant, on my subway before it broke down, giant, like a backpack that was an animal head, like a white tiger. So there's just sitting in the middle of the subway with the head that was as big as what an animal's head would really be. And
Have you got a photograph for that?
Yeah, I do.
Excellent, cool. We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, and then she'll come and kill me.
Oh, the tiger will come and kill you. Oh, yeah.
But
cool.
You know, it's always something interesting going on. You just got to keep your eyes open.
Yeah. You got to keep your eyes open, man. And which camera, out of your plethora of cameras, do you use most?
I am using my X100F a lot, the Fuji. I like the size, and I use it with a flash a lot, Coney Island.
With an external flash or just the internal?
With the external flash, the EZ or EX20 or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And I use my Leica M10 a lot with either a 35 or a 50. And my Leica Q with a 28. Those are like the three things. I'm really trying to stop the spending because I really, you know, whatever. I've got great gear. I don't need any more gear. I need to just kind of stick with the gear I have and learn it better. But those are the three that are most in my rotation.
All right, cool. Bradley, you're a Leica guy, aren't you?
I shot Leica for years and I love it. I'm actually in the process of looking for another just to use with a 50 because I really like that way of working. I like seeing external to the finder. I like how quiet and discreet they are. So I actually was chatting with Giselle maybe a few days ago just about the M10.
Really? Why wasn't I invited to this chat? How
we'll
dare you?
Do it on the next one. But yeah, I used for many years. I shot M3, M4, M6, M7 bodies at weddings. And what's funny is I don't know if I shared this on an earlier episode, but you know how people are, especially in America, about perception and size. And I overheard someone say to another person when I was shooting a just silver Leica, and this woman's like, I heard her say to a friend, "Hey, those don't look very professional."
Yeah, I get that all the time with the Fujis, man. It's like, yeah. What's your other job?
That's not big enough. Yeah, that's not. I'm sure things will pick up for you, Ian. You'll be able to get a bigger camera.
You'll be able to buy a better camera. Somebody asked me what kind of cameras that I used. This was only last week. Do you use Canon or Nikon? I use Fujis. All right. Why don't you use one of the better brands? I'm not quite sure that you understand what it is that you're asking me, and I'll leave that there. Okay, cool.
We all love advice while we're on the job, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, to be fair, I don't get it half as much as I used to do. It used to happen really often about people telling me what I should be shooting, or did you get that, or, do you know, it's kind of like go and photograph this, and it doesn't happen half as much as it used to.
Based on the pictures I've seen of you, it looks like you've developed the right attitudinal face in order to dissuade the sort of comments. There it is.
That face. Like, what the fuck? Yeah.
Don't
okay.
talk to me.
Yeah. So, cool, good stuff, Giselle. I really like your work, and I'm sure Bradley. Yeah, no problem.
I do too. Yeah.
You do. We wouldn't have asked you to come along if we didn't.
Yeah, we take a vote, and it was 2-0. So you're on. We haven't worked out what to do in case of a tie.
Ian and I found each other, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, and then obviously I got to Bradley through you, so it was good to find you both.
I think it might have been longer than a year ago. I think that we originally, I started liking your photographs on LO, and that might have been 2 years ago.
Maybe. I still post on LO. I like the format. I mean, it's not for, it's not the cult following. You're not going to get a ton of, although I think I do have like 20,000 people following me, but I don't know that they're all. but it's not for the likes or the, thing. I just like the way the photos display, and there's been some good talent on there.
Yeah, it kind of fell off for me. I don't know, and I keep trying to go back to LO, and I post a little bit, and then I don't know. Maybe it's the lack of interaction.
Yeah, there's only so much time. We have.
Yeah.
I don't know if I know we all participate in Instagram, and I have kind of a love-hate relationship with that, because I think it accelerates or it deteriorates people's ability to really study photographs. They're so eager to take it all in a split second and move on.
But they're so small as well.
Yeah, that's the other problem.
I have a real issue with Instagram. Like, the photographs are just so small. Like, I can't look at it. I can't get it. I can't get a good an idea. Even in the app that I use on the desktop, they still never display that big. Or you go to the website, they're still never that big. You can't get like a full size picture, and I don't know. Maybe people are shooting towards that. That's why everything has to have a little bit of a wow factor.
Actually an interesting observation, because from your own work, there are, and even if you were like, we talked to Stephen, when you're laying out a book, there are photographs that read when they're small, and there are photographs that have to be large or double page spreads. It's interesting to think about how we're altering how we perceive photographs, because we're seeing so many at that small size. You get the composition at a glance, but you lose a lot of the subtlety.
It did like Ello for the big format. I mean, that's one of the things that drew me to it in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And me. And I think I was quite excited by the fact that I just, like, every day that I looked, I had like another 400 followers. Like, this is ace. I'm going to be huge on LO. And it just never really kind of went anywhere. Like, hundreds of thousands of followers and nothing ever came from it. It's like one like. Oh.
You should read there's a New York Times story just about 2 weeks ago called The Follower Factory. Right. And it talks about all the people buying Twitter followers and stuff like that. Yeah. Part of why the Instagram thing with me is you see these people and they've got, 400,000 followers, and sometimes it just feels like they're like gathering,
Yeah. It's weird though, isn't it? Why you would go and buy followers just to get likes that are completely meaningless as far as your life is really concerned.
Yeah, I feel like some of them, it's more of that YouTube phenomena where I think people are getting to a point where they're getting sponsorship that way, or people get paid through YouTube, through advertising. I don't know exactly how it works on Instagram, but I think if you have,
a bazillion followers.
Yeah, like then people like maybe, camera manufacturers or whoever might come to you and say, hey, we want you to promote our product, and you have a good user base, so those people are more valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, whatever the reasons, it's ridiculous.
Well, that brings us full circle to as soon as somebody starts paying you to do what you do, something changes.
Something changes, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, ridiculous. And talking about all things ridiculous, let's talk about ridiculous things within the industry, maybe, or cool things, anything that you... we tend to go down the ridiculous route, as I say most weeks, because most things seem to be ridiculous as far as the photography industry is concerned. So is there anything making you happy or getting under your skin, Giselle?
Most of the time when I see something that I don't like because I don't like it or because it bores me, I just stop looking, right? You see all these people. I had somebody, I broke my leg once and I ended up homebound, and I ended up putting a lot of pictures of my cats because I couldn't get out of the house. And somebody said, well, please go outside and take some pictures again. I was like, I'm sorry that you don't like what I'm posting. You could always unfollow me. But, I just really, I'm not into things that I think are exploitative. I don't, there are a lot of people who shoot homeless people, and just not what I'm all about. I think that's really, very few people have a message with that and do it right. Like maybe Chris Arnade, who's done a lot for homeless communities. People still deserve dignity.
Yes,
so
indeed.
I'm not trying to take this cheap shot of somebody who's, whatever.
It can come across as easy pickings.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you can see, it's not always obvious, but I think the point is if you see someone doing that sort of work, and if they have a sympathy and a connection for what they're shooting, rather than like, hey, here's something that looks dramatic, or it's specifically about the aesthetic, that feels like exploitation. It's like, I'm sorry that you think people who are down and out, or they're disfigured or whatever the case may be, that this is something that you can exploit to
for your own gain.
Yeah, because those are the kind of things that it adds a level of sensationalism, and I think that when I feel that when I'm looking at it, it feels wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that it's probably, there are people that don't do that, but I think the temptation is like you mentioned, it's sort of easy pickings because that it's going to be controversial things get more views.
I don't know. Everybody's got their own line, and I know when I'm taking a picture, if I'm feeling dirty and ugly about it, then I don't want to do it. So, and then just the other thing that just bores me is everybody's on their damn cell phone. I see a lot of street photography that doesn't have any story or any connection.
Yeah.
Right? You see a picture of somebody walking down the street or on the subway with their face in their phone.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't interest me at all. Behind you.
That's
Ian's dog is up.
Sorry, I know all the podcasters can't see it, but Ian's favorite idiot dog, Arthur, is here.
He is. He comes in here. He just comes and hangs out on the sofa behind me, just chills out. Yeah.
We're gonna make hissy noises at him once we cut them.
Yeah, we will. Oh, I'll get him over. I'll hold him up to the camera so you can have a good look right at his face. Yeah. I mean, that whole taking, I'm going to take pictures of people on the mobile phones. It's so unimaginative, and it's like Martin Parr did that 20 years ago, man, or a little longer than 20 years ago. That was a project for him, I remember somebody saying to me when I first started with photography, if you think of a project that you really want to do, Martin Parr's probably already done it.
Done it. I went to Cuba about a year ago, and they don't really have internet. I mean, they're getting there, but still it's mostly for big hotels. And people who do have internet access, it's expensive for the average Cuban, and you don't see people like that. So it was really cool for me to walk around the streets of Havana and other cities and not see everybody with their face in their phone, because it was like, look at, just shot 10 people on the street and nobody had a phone out.
It's gotta be refreshing. So I have a question. So, Ian and I earn our money one way. When you have, I'm trying to think of the best way to ask it.
Just ask it, man.
Do you, when you're shooting, what do you find yourself consciously avoiding? Because when I think of street photography, there are the masters from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but I think that there's led to a lot of, street cliches. Are you consciously aware of yourself avoiding cliches while you're shooting?
Well, I think the cell phone thing is definitely a cliche for me. And, there are some things that I do that I know have been done to death. I mean, I have, again, Martin Parr's probably done it 100 times. There's a Russian community in next to Coney Island in Breton Beach, and I shoot these people that sit on the bench because it's their real social. Like, the ladies dress up in pearls and fur, and they're out there to be seen. And, and then sometimes I'll look at it and go, oh, shit, this has been done by people better than me.
Yeah. But it's that kind of, it's that idea that, for me, when I'm on the street, I mean, even when I'm photographing a wedding, it's that Lomo idea of photography, or that Lomo approach is like, just shoot the shit that you're drawn to, man. And it's kind of my idea of what I find interesting comes from my whole life of a lifetime of everything that I've been through. So it's like I believe that makes my photographs mine. And although I do sometimes when I'm shooting go, all right, I'm not even going to make that photograph, man. It's kind of,
well, that's the thing. Like Ian and I were talking about, I think maybe a week or so ago, that there are things that happen at every wedding, and so you think, on one hand, oh, this has been done, but on in two other ways, you think, well, there's got to be some way that I can make this interesting, and there's some way that I can make this personal and push it to something that, I haven't seen, because it's so easy, as humans, the longer we live, the more we see the same things over and over again, and you can't get those things out of your head. So trying to find ways to look at the things that you're shooting in a new way.
These Russians that sit on the benches all the time, I have little stories for them in my mind about what I imagine their lives to be. And, I have a favorite guy who I always just think is really just good-looking, classy, older gentleman, and his lady. I always think he's kind of like the stud of the benches. And then I didn't see the lady for a long time. And I went out the other day and I saw her and she's in a wheelchair all bundled up. So like in my mind, I'm connecting to these people, even if they don't know I'm connecting to them.
Yeah. There's a book title for you, The Stud of the Benches.
The stud of the benches.
The stud of the benches. No, like you know them like really well, and you'll bump into one in the street one day and go, "Oh, hi, how? Oh, all right." Bradley, anything interesting, exciting, anything getting under your skin?
Well, one thing we touched on it briefly, I think last week, but the $3,000 Kodak Super 8 camera, that I think they're going to be marketing this to hipsters. Well, when you have a $3,000 price point and now they're saying these are going to be cartridges and you have to send the cartridges directly to Kodak, and their goal is to quote unquote make it as easy to use as a DSLR.
You push the button, we do the rest.
Yeah. So
for fuck's sake.
Are we moving forward? Are we trying to, it's like, this is the conundrum with Kodak is, someone who's made some of the best products for photography ever. And now they're going back and trying to revisit previous successes rather than, looking at how they can push things forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, it's a digital format with cartridges, or is it film with cartridges?
It's my understanding that it's film. It's cartridge film.
Okay.
But I think that's another topic. Is
big cartridges. It's like you just put a cartridge in every 30 seconds.
And I shot, when I was in art school, I don't even remember who made the camera, but I was Kodak Super 8 film. And that was when I had that, the only experience of editing Super 8 film, which is you're literally cutting it and taping it. And that's a completely separate discipline than having, digitized film cartridges. So I don't know if it's better or worse, but it is sort of funny that all these things are being reborn because there's a whole generation of people who have never shot film, and a lot of people want to experience it. And, it's being marketed as sometimes better, as sometimes it's a trend, and it's not necessarily better or worse. It's just that it's another way for Kodak to make money on a weird product.
Of course, but they won't make money on it. That's probably what's going to happen.
There to say no.
Yeah.
It's their backup plan, which is, aren't they in cryptocurrency now?
Yeah, we talked about that I was brought up a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, I read a little bit into it, and it sounds so confusing and pointless.
Yeah, why them?
And what on earth? It's like, so photographers can then buy, I don't know, you have credits to buy other products, and what
you can buy Kodak tote bags.
But with money, I can buy things with my fucking phone, man. It's kind of, stop complicating everything with your crazy cameras and phone cameras and pointless products that nobody wants or needs. What's going on?
Well, would you have liked to have been at that meeting? Have you heard about this Bitcoin thing? What can we do? Yeah. We could bring back Ektachrome. No. I have a better idea.
No, but I don't know. It's like, this is the Kodak bashing podcast. They do get it every week, but like they deserve it. You know?
Hey, stick with Tri-X. Just keep making Tri-X, and you'll make people happy.
I have no doubt that there are a million like pointless new products that will promise to give you better photographs or make your photographs pop, just like the pros. Products to get you noticed, and it's kind of that'll get you noticed for being a douchebag. It's like kind of, but what I have noticed as well is this, like, because I've started to look at these things more because of this podcast. Obviously, the Facebook algorithms are now showing me more of this stuff, and I didn't realize how bad the situation was as far as workshops and awards and presets. It's just like, when's this bubble going to burst? It has to burst at some point.
It's big business, and there's a part of me that goes, look at this jerk making, flashcards. But then I'm like, but there's somebody out there who's buying it, so maybe I think, well, kudos to you that you found something that somebody's going to buy. I mean, I might think it's stupid, but somebody's.
It's kind of odd. I just find it like odd. Like the amount of workshops just in the wedding industry alone. It's like, and I can see people who are the same people are liking these workshops and going on the workshops, and they're just moving from one workshop to the next, looking for validation, and that's all it is. It's like the people who it doesn't happen that often. People like send me a photograph, or will you look at my work? Will you critique my work? Or like, what do you think of this photograph? It's terrible. That's what I think of it.
There was a series. I don't remember who was promoting it, but there was a website where Bruce Gilden, reviews your photographs, and he was very funny. He's very blunt, and he actually liked a few, but he was harsh and funny when he was telling people why something was crap.
But I read that. I remember reading that and going, all right, you know what? But I think that if you're going to ask somebody that you admire for their opinion, then hopefully they really tell you what's working and what's not.
In my experience,
well, exactly.
That's not what people are after. It reminds me, yeah.
But, I don't ask somebody unless I really want them to tell me. And, at least I have a few close friends that will be like, that's not one of your best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm quite happy for people to tell me that my photographs are bad, and I'm quite happy to tell them that they're wrong.
Yeah. Well, you think about that, just seeking that is sort of a form of insecurity, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It takes me back to like years ago when we had a television. There was a program that was on called The Hotel Inspector. I don't know whether you had something like that in the US.
Ramsey, kind of like an undercover, like.
Kind of like that, but what happened? There would be a failing hotel. They would, as the show, they would send this hotel inspector in, and she would go in and say, right, well, you're doing that wrong, you're doing that wrong, you're doing that wrong, and they'd be going, no, we're doing everything right. You have a failing business, okay? We are here to help you, and you're not listening to a word. It's like the kind of Gordon Ramsay chef thing. He goes in and they go, nope, it's fine. It's not, it's shit. And that's a lot of the photography industry. It's kind of like, people say, like, well, can you have a look at this? And you go, yeah, well, that, and that. And it's, it's like that on purpose. And, well, okay, there's a reason you're not getting hired, and it's because your photographs aren't good enough. Your skills aren't good enough. Your understanding of what you do, and you have no vision. And it's kind of like, yeah, all of that kind of stuff. The amount of workshops and the people who are delivering these workshops are like, the most unqualified people. They know nothing about themselves, never mind photography. And
well, maybe that's part of their process of like, maybe I'll learn something. I mean, maybe accidentally, but maybe I'll learn something about myself by telling other people what I do, or, I don't know.
They marketed themselves as an expert and somebody believed them. So, I mean...
All right. Oh, okay, it's fine then. I'll just let it go, Ian. Let it go.
But somebody's making a career out of it because they had the balls to kind of say that they knew what they were doing, even if they didn't. And that might not be something that any of us would do, right? Because that doesn't feel like there's integrity behind that. But
well, the thing is, I mean, I've been an educator in photography even before. I was photographing weddings, and I taught Photoshop classes and basic photography, and then beginner photography, and then went on to like photography history and all of that kind of stuff. And what I try to promote from like my point of view is I do they're not workshops, they're more education programs. And it's difficult for me when I say to people, right, well, you're going to have to work hard, you're going to have to study, you're going to have to learn, you're going to have to do this. And I'm not promising fame and fortune, and I'm not promising book more brides, and I'm not promising that they're going to be revered by the fucking hipster gang. People just don't want to know, man.
But that's what you're going against the grain with workshops like we've alluded to before. I think a lot of the desire from the people that go to these is like, can you please tell me how to shortcut experience by telling me what works and what doesn't work, so I can not learn the hard way? There's value to being thrown down the stairs metaphorically to really examine what you're doing and not just be told what to do, and just to create more of you. We all like what we do, and that's why we do it, but I don't think the world would be better with more people like me, and we don't need more Ians, and we don't need more Giselles.
Maybe.
Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself, mate.
Well, hey, if Suckers is buying, we're all okay with it. Is that what we're saying?
It depends how many clients we had that month.
But on the good side of things, another photographer that I admire greatly, Sarah Lee, is just she's putting a book together at the moment. I believe there used to be a thing a while ago. It was like buy books, not gear, and that is kind of fundamental to my understanding of photography, and I think it's fundamental to anybody's understanding of photography and what it is to figure out what they like, figure out what they don't like, and ultimately to help them understand where they fit into photography to better inform the photographs that they make. So all the books, I think we're going to have this a bit of a thing where we'll talk about the photographers that we have on the podcast, ask them about what the first photo book that they had, and the photo books they admire the most now, or what is the favourite photo book, and we can put some direct links to that stuff on the website, on the blog, so you can click, if you're going to buy them anyway, use our click-throughs to Amazon, because it doesn't cost you anymore, but it eventually will help us out a little bit as to what we're doing, and as we want this to be an educational thing. So anything that we find or we feel that is going to be beneficial to you, then we'll have these kind of links that you can click through. We get a little bit back from that, which is cool.
I think of it as a free book workshop.
A free book workshop? Yeah,
it's a free book work. We've already told you what we like, but that's the thing. I think that some people want with workshops too, is that sort of shallow side of like, well, what equipment should I start with? Like, oh, this photographer I like uses this, and therefore if I get that, then I'm halfway there. And I think that's a really dangerous, or not dangerous, but that's sort of a foolish way of looking at things.
Yeah. Some people never get out of that either. But yeah, anyway.
I have a great oven, and I tell people nothing comes out of it.
The what, sorry?
Yeah.
I have an oven that's a good oven, and nothing comes out of it. So when I see somebody who, goes, oh, if I had a Leica, or if I had a Fuji, or if I had a whatever, it's like,
yeah. It doesn't work like that.
I keep looking at my stove going, come on.
Nice pie, please, this time.
As Stephen Bullman said, it's 4 inches behind the camera where the magic happens.
Kirk Maston said that, but I'm pretty sure he got that quote from somebody else.
Let's credit both of them.
Let's credit everybody. They might as well. But yeah, I mean, like fair. For us, as far as like photographers that we have on the podcast, and photography books that we talk about and stuff like that, it's like I want people that I admire to succeed, and like especially Stephen Ballman, Sarah Lee, and anybody who's making that step into kind of like, I'm making a book and I'm putting my work out there, and I want to help kind of drive that a little bit with books and music and movies and paintings and anything that fires our rockets, because ultimately what we photograph is who we are. And our photographs are the product of our study and practice and life experience.
Well, there was something relevant that I learned when I was taking motorcycle racing classes, and there was a famous racer whose name was Keith Code, and his quote was, "You go where you look." And I think that's true in all areas of life. Like the world is exposed based on what you're looking for. And so you everything that factors into your own perception is how you see the world.
Absolutely. We don't see things how they are. We see things how we are.
Yes.
Indeed.
Good quote.
So head over to our Facebook page, Out of Focus Podcast. Add your discussion points. Get involved. Start some kind of conversation. Anything that you think we've talked about that's bullshit, anything that you agree with, get on iTunes as well. Leave us a review, ratings. Obviously, if you like us, don't just think you have to do it. But that kind of
no pressure.
Yeah. If you don't like us, just don't bother. Don't feel that you have to give us a good review or 5 stars if you don't like it.
But still, thank you.
But still, thank you anyway. But it helps us if you leave some reviews and add ratings and things like that. It helps us with visibility as well. So do it. And as I said, I'll be setting up links to books and things like that, as we mentioned, so you can get them directly through Amazon. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much every book that I buy now, I get from Amazon anyway, because you get the best deals. You can get your second-hand books there. I very rarely buy anything new either. So if you can save yourself £20-30 on a book just because somebody's opened it and had a look at it, then it's a book, man. It's not like you're buying used toilet paper or something. But,
does anyone do that?
Well, I think that
there's got to be.
In reality, we all are buying used toilet paper when we're buying toilet paper.
That's a different thing.
But anyway, you get me point. Thank you for your support so far as well. It really does mean a lot to us, and we hope that we can keep this thing going for forever. And that's a very long time.
We have realistic goals.
Realistic goals forever until one of us dies. Then we will stop.
We have a pact.
We have a pact, yeah. If one of us dies, that's it. You can't get another co-host. So, Giselle, where can people find your work and you?
GiselleDupre.com. You put a link in your thing so people spell it right.
Yeah. Dupre.
Yeah, and Facebook and my Instagram, Giselle.Dupre, and Ello, whatever. I'll give you some links.
Yeah, cool. And we'll put that in there. Bradley?
I'm at bradleyhansen.com. I'm on Facebook as Bradley Hansen Photography. Twitter is Bradley Hansen. Instagram is Bradley Hansen Photography.
Just Bradley Hansen, and you're going to find Bradley Hansen on the internet.
Yes.
Yes.
If you, whether or not you want to.
Whether or not you want to. Well, you should. People should. If they haven't already, they should. And they should go and check out Giselle's work too. Me, IanWeldon.com. You can find me on Instagram at IanJWeldon. My wedding shenanigans are at not_wedding_photography, I think. Or something like that. I think
you got it.
Not wedding photography will be in there. Our Facebook page, if you want to send us a message, you can send it through there. And keep in touch. And it was really nice having you on, Giselle.
Thanks, guys.
No problem.
Thank you for being here.
Goodbye. See you next week. See you later, Bradley. Our music was lovingly created by my friend James William Nicholson. His details will be in the show notes, and we will see you all next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.